I think that one of the problem in this kind of conversation is that people, when they look back, they
change history.
They have a story.
Right.
And they will tell you, and they will show you, and they will explain to
rationalize
you
and justify
why I was so fucking smart that I knew that I had to do this. The truth is that we were lost.
Okay.
We had no idea.
Okay, welcome to The Hard Pivot. This is the first time we're doing this podcast. I have an amazing guest here right now, Gilad Uziely from Sequence. He's going to tell you more about his journey in a minute. But I just want to take a second to introduce the concept. A few months ago, my startup draft board went through a period where I couldn't figure out what was wrong with the company. And finally, I realized that something was wrong, but we didn't know what. And so we started investigating what to do about it. And we spent about 2 months investigating, trying to figure out how to mitigate the problem we had. And maybe another time I'll go deeper into what we faced, and decided it wasn't working. So I decided to pivot the company into an entirely new direction, talk to investors, talk to friends, talk to my team. The team structure had to change, and a whole bunch of other things. Fast forward 2 more months, we found a new idea. We're pushing ahead real fast on it. We're really excited for it. And so I decided, let me tell people in my network, and both close network and extended network via LinkedIn, that we're pivoting the company, because they've sort of been along the journey for this startup that's doing something in the recruiting and HR world, and they should know that we're changing directions. And so I posted on LinkedIn, and almost immediately I got close to a dozen founders who reached out both privately and publicly on the post saying, thank you so much for writing about this. We went through a similar pivot, or we're thinking about a pivot, or we're in a pivot ourselves right now, and we don't know what to do. Should we be more public about it? And so it got me thinking, I'm certainly not the first startup founder to go through a pivot. Gilad's smiling right now. And so maybe there are others that not only, I know there are others that went through a pivot, but maybe some of them want to share their story because it's interesting both to them. Maybe it's a key to their success, or maybe it was a failure and it didn't work, and so they learned something from it. But maybe their struggles or the things they learned could help others. So that's what The Hard Pivot's going to be about. It's just a test, but so far it seems like some great founders are interested, including Gilad. So Gilad, well, I'll introduce himself in a second, is the founder of Sequence. And again, I'll let him talk about Sequence, but the old pitch used to be it's a financial router, but I think the new pitch is better, so I'll let him do that. But Gilad has had a ton of experience in the startup world, and he has been building companies for years. And there was a company actually before Sequence called Lance that went through a pivot. And that's the story we're going to hear today. How did Lance become Sequence? So welcome, Gilad.
Thank you. I think before we talk about me, I think I love the concept. I think that it's something that people don't tend to talk about. Sometimes they are shy. Obviously, if it wasn't successful, it's even more than it's obvious that they are shy about it. But I think there's so much to learn, and if people would just talk about it, they will prevent so many mistakes from so many people that it's worth doing.
It's kind of like what's the academic thing, the survivorship bias, right? We only hear these stories about the startups that survived by the very sliver of their skin and now they became big companies, but there are so many more that went under, right? And you don't hear about them. And so then everyone takes the story of, if I just do what these guys did, then I'll be successful. Even there are so many startups that did exactly what they did and how they responded to a certain situation, and they failed. And so I think the goal would be, or like you said, the advantage is, let's learn from people, good, bad, and different. I'm going to have startup founders on here who talked about their pivots that failed. And that's okay. There's still great things to learn from that.
No, 100%. And I have so much respect for people who are willing to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I learned from the post. I didn't post that. The idea of a podcast never entered my mind. My wife had a podcast for 3 years, and I saw it's a decent amount of work, and I never thought that I would do it. But I don't know. I just met so many great founders like you. So maybe we'll take that as a kicking off point, and say, so first of all, before you started Lance, what was your background? How did you get there?
Yeah, so I'm 44, just over 44, and I had a payslip or a W-2 for 2 years of my life. I've always done stuff for myself, not necessarily
living
startups.
On the edge all the time.
No, not necessarily on the edge, not necessarily startups. Traditional businesses, travel businesses, real estate. So I don't really have huge motivation working for others. Let's put it that way. So first business was a traditional travel agency. That from that I had my first go at a startup. Okay. That was in
the travel space.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
By the way, for everyone listening, whether it's 2 people or 200 people, I don't know most of this story, so I know a little bit of it, but this is fascinating to me.
Yeah. So that was 15, 16 years ago. And then I started that business with my girlfriend at the time. Today she's my wife.
Okay. That could have gone in two directions.
Exactly.
I'm glad that's the direction it went in.
I wanted to keep the marriage intact. So
it had to be successful.
So she took the real business, the one who was actually making money. And I took on trying to build a travel startup. I came into it with...
So she kept going with the travel agency.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, it's still working.
And you had an idea for a startup based on the stuff you've been doing in the travel agency.
Exactly.
Okay.
So many mistakes. So many. A lot of, just like wrong assumptions, not understanding basically nothing, but did understand travel. So we tried to build something. We've raised like what was a decent even, like, seed at the time.
And so what year is this, roughly, if you remember?
2010,
okay.
Maybe even a little bit before that.
So the world is recovering from the financial crisis, but it's still pretty dead. Like it's pre the glory days of SaaS. It's VC is there, but it's not booming.
Yeah. It's especially in Israel, right? The very beginning. But I was very, very lucky to get into the Junction, which was one of Israel's first accelerators. It started by Genesis at the time. Today doesn't exist anymore, but by Eden Shochat, who's also now our lead investor in Sequence. So it's like
he's at Aleph, right?
Yes, he's at Aleph.
Yep.
So it's an interesting. We closed the loop or just started the loop. I don't know. We'll see.
That's a decade-long.
Exactly.
Coming back to this.
More than a decade, right?
Yeah.
But I think it shows a lot about the strength of the Israeli startup ecosystem, but that's a different story. So raised some money, went into the Junction, learned a lot about startups.
How far into the startup journey are you at this point? When you started the company versus when you entered the Junction?
In the beginning.
Okay.
4 to 6 months afterwards. I don't really remember the exact dates, but something like that. So came in with a lot of knowledge, or some knowledge in travel, zero in startups, learned a few lessons the hard way. At the end of the day, we couldn't scale it to what we wanted it to scale. We had to close that. My conclusion, I've learned a lot of lessons. But my next step was, when I was thinking with myself what I want to do, I decided I want to go to a place that even if I'll disappear, no one will miss me. They won't even feel that I'm gone. I used so even if I'm dead, they wouldn't know. That's what you
wanted to go to?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because after being a CEO or founder of a startup is very hard.
You sort of wanted to get lost in the shuffle in a sense.
Exactly.
Right?
I wanted to go to a huge, just a place that I will be
because you felt like everyone was relying on you so much and all the pressure was on you and everyone was looking to you for the solutions, and then you were like, okay, you know what, I need a break from that. Is that the right way?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So I went and started again, not on a Paisley, but I started doing projects for the municipality of Tel Aviv.
Okay.
Which was the exact opposite of a startup, right?
Government bureaucracy versus total freedom of your own business. Yeah.
I got exactly what I wanted, which is even if I'll die in my room, nobody will know, right? And it's not going to stop the municipality of Tel Aviv from delivering what it needs to deliver, unlike my startup.
Right.
Or
not delivering what they need to deliver.
That's
not casting aspersions.
Yeah. No, that's I've seen worse.
Okay.
But it was a very interesting experience, which I truly enjoyed, because I got to my job basically was to connect the local startup ecosystem for the benefit of the people who live and work or visit the city.
Okay.
And so we've got to do a lot of work in schools for kids with special needs, a lot of really life-changing, for me, it was life-changing experiences that really were important.
Yep.
Working with school for kids with autism, all kind of things that were really high
motivation for you.
Yeah, very motivating, but also with high impact.
Yeah.
Because we really change stuff for the good. So that was very, very exciting. So I've done that for quite some time. But I always wanted to build my own company. That's where my real passion lies. And in early 2018, I met a friend who became my co-founder.
Were you looking for a co-founder?
No. I knew her from before. She was also working for Aleph at the time. And what
for context, everyone, Aleph is one of the better known VC funds in Israel. Very strong reputation.
So, and we were friends. We knew each other. We knew each other from before. We started talking about some ideas that we had, and basically both of us were freelancers or self-employed for most of our lives. Also, when I was with the municipality, I was like a freelance consultant kind of thing. And I've done other stuff as well, like working with other multinationals. So I would like consulting, business development, everything that needed a certain level of sophistication around like business development, basically, or project management. And even though I went to business school, I didn't really know how to manage a business of one.
I don't think business school teaches you that.
I've done my fair share of accounting classes, but I don't know how to manage a business of one.
Right.
And when we started, that was like the first thing that we wanted to help people.
Okay, so this is the origin story. I get it. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Cool. Because you had been a business of one for so long.
Yes.
Got it.
For almost all my life, basically. So that's a pain that we felt that was worthwhile solving for.
Okay.
And we started with like just trying a few different like products. Some of them would like connect to all your bank accounts, show you what's going on, give you some recommendations. It was an app. Then we tried something slightly different. And when we started talking to the people who actually used that, they told us, wow, this is really cool. I can see everything.
So was it like Mint in a way?
Kind of, but geared for the self-employed.
Okay.
So this is how much you need to put in taxes. It was more of a visibility or like a planning tool. Now there are many, right? Like you have from YNAB to Copilot to Rocketman. There are a bunch. And for the bigger businesses, obviously, you have forecasting tools and all that.
Right.
But that was 2018. And then we started talking to those people, and they told us, I really like it, but I actually want to move my money around. I want to be able to touch the screen and move and
not
move the
just
money.
be read only, be read and write. Okay.
Exactly. And our conclusion, which was wrong, but was like,
but let's just where were you in that moment? What was your thesis? Yeah, your conclusion then, even though you found out that it was wrong.
It's a really good question, and when I'm sure that you're like, I think that one of the problem in this kind of conversation is that people, when they look back, they have
history.
They have a story.
Right.
And they will tell you, and they will show you, and they will explain to
rationalize and justify
why I was so fucking smart that I knew that I had to do this. The truth is that we were lost.
Okay.
We had no idea.
Okay, that's
like
great.
People, the only thing that we knew is that we really wanted to get feedback from users, which is not easy. It's not easy.
It's also very biased. The people who choose to give you feedback may be different from the average user.
Yeah, that's the second problem. The first one is really get people to give you feedback. I mean, if nobody cares about your product, it's very hard to get feedback about it.
Yep.
So, but the feedback that we did get was, I want to be able to move my money around.
Okay.
And we said, okay, this is interesting. What do we need to do? And that was a period that was already 2019. We got selected to Techstars in New York. So we flew to New York for 3 months, which was an amazing experience. And Techstars is amazing. And then we said, okay, we need to pivot and we need to become a bank. The bank for the self-employed.
So you view that as kind of your first pivot. So you went from like a read only, I want to understand my situation as a solopreneur, sort of one man business, to actually I need to be able to do something about it and make changes to specifically to my bank accounts. You weren't dealing with anything else related to money. For your money.
Yeah.
And this is not personal money, right? It's just for my business accounts.
It's free. Yes. From that, we would send money to your personal account.
Okay.
That was one of the. Well, I'll talk about the product in a second. But maybe we should jump into the product. But the only thing that I want to say is that at this point, when they told us, I don't want to just to see everything, I want to be able to actually move it. Our conclusion was we need to become the bank, which now I know is wrong. It took me 5 years and $10-12 million to get to it.
I will say, in your defense, a lot of people were having that conclusion. A lot of companies, Dave and Chime, and all these companies started back then saying we need to become the bank, or at least we need to the user look like the bank.
Yes. So and others that were focused on the micro businesses and small businesses like Lily, North One, a bunch, and Oxygen. Some more successful than others, but it was like that's for me again a red sign,
like a red flag.
A red flag, sorry, because
You're saying in retrospect or even at the moment? Like, do you remember being at the moment being like, oh, everyone else is doing it, therefore we must be onto something? You're saying looking back.
Looking back, 100% looking back. If everybody thinks and doing what you're doing, it will be very hard for you to innovate and to be different and to do something that really matters. And when we pivoted, the next pivot, we had like a framework for that. So we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Lance. Lance,
Yeah.
what we've built with Lance was basically we changed the way bank account looked like. So instead of having checking and savings, we've built what we called stacks. Each stack was technically a sub-account with its own capabilities. So the product looked a bit like an app store for your money with all those, like, it was really nice, very well designed. And for example, there was like tax stack, payroll stack, like saving stacks either towards retirement or towards buying a new MacBook. And so it was like a closed ecosystem of sub-accounts. And every time, for example, I was like a freelance designer, whatever, I did a gig, got paid, money hit the account, and then there were like automations and relationship between the different stacks.
And the stacks were like automated, or someone would have to come in and set it up for themselves? Like if I'm a user in New York versus a user in Nevada, presumably my taxes are different.
We took a very rigid approach, and we told them this is how it needs to be. Some of them, you could change and play, and move things around, or opt in or opt out from different stuff. But it was kind of rigid.
Okay.
But what happened is that money would hit the account.
And so but one more question to make sure I'm clear. You were essentially asking these small businesses, is that the word you use? Small businesses? Micro businesses to move from their existing main banking relationship, whatever local bank or national bank they had for their business purposes, and instead use you for their business purposes. Like switch over entirely.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is also competing against Bank of America and Chase is not a smart idea. Let me tell you.
I wasn't going to make any value judgment. I just wanted to make sure I understood because for sure that's a challenge, and I'm sure you'll tell us what you learned about that.
Absolutely. So just to like money hit the account. For example, the tax stack, we calculated, saved, and paid the quarterly payments to the IRS.
Oh, okay.
Payroll will send money to your personal bank account. Retirement to your SEP IRA or wherever you wanted it to go. You could set up like goal stacks. So I want to buy a new MacBook, I need to buy a new camera.
Vacation.
Yeah, whatever it is that you needed. So that was the product. We grew with it fast. We've opened over 30,000 accounts in 18 months.
Okay. And so now, when did you launch the product?
That was launched in 2020.
Like mid-pandemic?
Just before, maybe.
Got it.
Yeah, we finished Techstars New York 2019 and got back to Israel right before COVID. So it was, during COVID.
And how did you grow to 30,000? What was there, like some trigger or some hook?
Mostly performance marketing, which is another mistake.
Okay, well, you and I can wax poetic about that for a while. Okay, so performance marketing.
Performance marketing mostly, but I think that was definitely a mistake. But before that, I think that we've done a few mistakes that were more at the core at what we wanted to do. So we wanted to build a financial company using embedded finance tools. And what happens is that with embedded finance, which is awesome if you're really embedding it and not trying to build a company just based on that, you get hit by all the downside, fraud, chargebacks, disputes, that's all on you.
Yep.
And you can't really make money on the other side because you can't lend against your balance sheet. That's how banks actually make money.
Right.
And we thought, so that was the first thing. And we've underestimated how big of an issue fraud would be. That's another thing. And then we said, okay, we are building something unique for a specific audience, so people will pay a subscription fee.
Okay.
But that just never happened in the ratio that would be worthwhile for us.
So that was one assumption where you were just off, that people would pay for this because it's so useful to them.
Yes, because at the end of the day, they always looked at us as a bank, and they are not used to paying subscription for a bank, right? Like they screw them in other ways, right? But they don't charge a subscription, like generally speaking. Some do.
I think it's a larger point about it's really hard to disrupt like social norms and business norms and human behavior, right? So if I'm everywhere I go, I see free banking accounts, even if, as you said, there's back end fees on bounced checks or overdrawn balance or wire fees or whatever it is, I still look at it as that's a free quote unquote account. And so someone to come to me like, hey, I can give you all that for free, but you have to pay $10 a month. All of a sudden I'm like, wait, but is it really worth $10 a month? How often am I going to have a bounce check? How often am I going to do a wire?
And you said, me, I'll never have a bounce check.
Right,
you know?
right.
So, by the way, that's here we did another, like more of it's a big mistake. Our conclusion was like, let's just drop the price.
Right.
Let's give it for free.
Right. Right.
Why? Because that's what everybody else is doing. But what the real thing that the users told us by not paying the subscription was, I don't see value.
Correct.
And this is very hard to see.
That's such parallels to my experience, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're like, let's give it for free. And then you start telling yourself stories, convincing yourself, building this imaginary
that it's better
world.
if it's free because then more users will use it and we'll have the network effects and da-da-da-da.
And they will tell their friends and their grandmother and their sister, right? and you are just fooling yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that it's something very human to do, right? Like it's like your baby, right?
I also think there's an element of it, and tell me if this resonates with you, of it's scary as a founder to charge for your product, because if people say no, your idea is dead, right? Like, and all this work that you did, investing in it, building in it, will people actually pay? And I know this is part of your sort of pivot story, but it's scary because you're like, wait, if my first 10 people say no, does that mean this is a bad idea or that I can't make it work? And it might mean that. And that's a scary thing, a fear of rejection, essentially.
100%. And that's the very first thing that we do, right? It's like your baby. As I said, it's like your baby. Nobody wants to admit that his baby is ugly, but there are ugly babies.
Yep.
You know? It's like,
yeah, and no one wants someone else to be forced to tell them. It's almost like you go to a random person on the street and say, you are required to tell me if my baby is ugly or beautiful, right? And like, as a founder, like my baby is my startup. Maybe I'm scared of someone saying it's ugly.
It's normal human behavior. The thing is that I think that something that I really would like other people, like especially people that are just starting, like the only important thing in being a founder of a startup is to always seek the truth. So by telling yourself stories, you are running away from the truth,
and you're like turning the other way.
Yeah, you'll end up losing like time, years of your life,
money, motivation.
So it's really, really, really important not to end up with the conclusion that I had that nobody wanted to pay, so I dropped the price. It's just stupid.
Right. Was part of you dropping the price also, just to give you a little bit of credit, or maybe not, but was also like, hey, we don't actually know how people are going to use this, so let's get them using it, and then we will see how they use it. Maybe not even concerned with them that they'll all of a sudden realize it's the most amazing thing in the world, but that you just didn't know how they're going to use it because by putting this sort of high price or the subscription price, they weren't using it. Sort of a chicken and egg thing, or you think that's giving yourself too much credit? I
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. But not, again, just to be honest, you just don't know what's going on. You see like people not converting to what you want them to convert, and you are just like, you are just doing it without thinking about it enough.
Right.
And what happens is you immediately see a spike in users.
When you move the subscription to zero.
Yes.
Yeah. When you make it free.
But basically it's like, we knew
it's tourists.
Yeah, it's like, you start telling yourself stories. We will be able to monetize down the road.
Right.
I don't recommend thinking that way.
So do you remember? So first of all, remind me, the team is who? It's you and a co-founder, or what's the team that started Lens?
I've started with 2 co-founders. Now I have 2 other co-founders.
Okay.
For Sequence. So then I wasn't the CEO at the time.
Yeah.
And I had Una was my co-founder, and I had another CTO who left early on.
And do you remember when you were having the conversations then about dropping, whoops, I keep hitting the mic, dropping the subscription, whether anyone was like, we shouldn't do this? Like, was it a discussion, or were you guys kind of like, we have to do this, and it was everyone sort of agreed? I'm not trying to place blame. I'm trying to understand, like, the hard things about pivots is like, you have to have tough discussions internally, and so trying to get to that.
That was just in the beginning of launching Lens.
Yeah.
So it was like, let's try, let's see, maybe in the future. It wasn't like a much of, we didn't feel that it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Because and it was a mistake, right? Because it is a big deal, because the users that you are giving it to them are telling you, I don't see like $9 a month being worth it.
Right. And $9 is, like a beer in New York City.
Exactly. So like, you're like, instead of understanding it, we just did the wrong thing to do.
Right.
Right. Then we grew fast. We opened over 30,000 accounts. We completely underestimated the problem of fraud. And the biggest problem of fraud was that if you had a cohort of people coming in,
Of new customers.
Yeah, new customers coming in. The month of March, you see that your customer acquisition cost was $150, $100, whatever it is, and you kept going. And with $100, $150 CAC still makes sense.
Yep. So then you acquire customers, and assuming that the LTV is going to cover that at some point.
Yeah, or even if it doesn't, you're willing to live with it.
Yep.
You think that you can improve it in the future. But then what happens is that you find out along the way that many of them were fraud. So you are closing them. So basically what happens is that your customer acquisition costs keeps going up all the time.
Yeah.
And your payback period keeps getting like longer and longer, the TROI, right?
Yep.
And at that time we've already raised $8 million.
Okay.
And like 2-3 months after the last round, in which we had like a plan on building like stuff and deepening the service for this audience, we just looked at the numbers. It was like a few months after we finalized the last tranche of money. We were like, this is just irresponsible.
This is the point, because it really resonates with me, that I want to dig in a little bit on.
Absolutely.
Was it one day you came in and for some reason you had taken a shower and felt refreshed that morning and you just sort of were able to look at the numbers with fresh eyes? Or was it like, I'm projecting here, but with me, there was this belief that things were going to change, that we're on the cusp of seeing the material, the hockey stick. And then over time, as that didn't happen, it sort of built up, I think subconsciously in the back of my mind, some worry, and then one day it just sort of converged with the conscious and said, okay, something's not working. Do you think it was that, or do you think it was just like one day you're like, whoa, hold on a second?
It wasn't one day. We knew that we had to do something to change the equation of the unit economics.
Yeah.
We knew it. We had a plan. We knew what we wanted to do.
Okay.
And that's also what we presented to investors who just invested a few months before.
Yep. We know that we're negative on LTV to CAC, but this is our plan to
but we are growing at that point. Like it was, you just needed to grow. You know, it was like a lot of money.
So this is probably what, 2021 or so?
Yeah. 2021, beginning of 2022, before everything started. Basically,
grow.
Yeah, grow.
SPACs are all over the place.
Push money into performance marketing. Exactly. Don't worry about it. We were pushed by the investors. Like just put more money. Grow your user base.
Yeah.
That's what we did based on feedback from some of our investors. And I didn't.
But also, this was, in addition to just the macro, in the world of neobanks, this was the time people were going crazy. Yes. Like these things were growing like weeds. And there was this view that, the brick and mortar banks were going to be dead because the startups were going to take them over. So like, it's not like you were this outlier in the world. Now, I know that you take responsibility for it, but like, it's also like you operate in a competitive environment.
Yes. And that's what everyone else were doing.
Right.
And again, it's, that's the fact that everybody else is doing that. It's not a good reason to do anything. But to me, I didn't really feel comfortable with that. But that was the sentiment, and we were pushed to do that. And we said, okay, we just need to offer another service on top for the users. And the users didn't.
I literally just wrote a post on LinkedIn about this. Like, when you think the extra feature is going to be the thing.
It's never. It's never the extra feature. Right. Never, ever.
Yeah.
I also think that sometimes, I think that what I can say about my team and also about myself is that we are very resilient. Maybe too much. Because being like really resilient, you can end up in places that are extremely difficult to get out of. We were lucky.
Because you just say, put my head down, keep at it. That's the resilience. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, we're so far down the path.
Yeah, and also, yes, and you just like put on patches and stuff and you just keep going because you believe that the way to go is to just keep going. The truth is that
ignore the naysayers, ignore the doubters. Like, we know what we're doing, and we're gonna figure it out. There's got to be a solution. Right?
Yeah, and it's not only that. It's like I many times felt there's nothing else that I can do, so I have to just keep going. Which is probably wrong. I ended
but
up.
But I think to just spend a second on that. I think it's a very deep thing, at least from the founders I've met and from the things I've read about the startup world. It's a lot of people, and I don't know if this applies to you, but I think that maybe it affected you. people's startups become the thing that they value themselves off of, not just monetarily, but it becomes their identity. And so if my startup struggles or my startup fails, what does that say about me as a person? And that's where sort of the overlap gets really, really unhealthy. Did you feel any of that?
100%, 120%, I have to say, especially when I was like much younger. When I started, I thought when I had to close my first startup, I thought it's the end of the world.
Right.
And you really feel it emotionally. Right. Like it's very, very, very hard. I can't say that I improved much because also now I feel the same. Some people can do it. I think it's more of like a character thing.
Yeah.
The only thing that now I feel experienced enough to say is that like you are not actually going to die if you're going to close your startup.
Right.
Like, new things will come.
Right. It's a big part of it, I think, is fear of the unknown, right? Like you don't know what happens if you close your startup. Whereas you know that if you keep going, at least you can give it that extra 6 months of runway or 12 months of runway, whatever, and exhaust every option.
And then you take another safe and another safe on top of that. And then I know people that, and we were in that position that our cap table, just like investors would look at it and would go like, I can't touch this.
Right. Wait, so hold on. So, but before we get there, so let's go back to, okay, so you're 3 months post fundraise. You come into the office, you look at the numbers, and it just all of a sudden, sorry, I don't know if you could hear that on the mic, but I snapped. So there's a moment. So what happens? Do you go talk to your co-founders? You guys already talking about it? Like, what's the first thing that happens when who recognizes it and who's like, how does that conversation start?
So we are talking about this and we just look at the numbers and we say that like taking more people now,
meaning acquiring more customers.
Acquiring more customers now is basically it's just shortening the runway of the company. So basically it means that
because you're losing money on every acquisition.
Yes, because we just keep seeing how expensive the customer acquisition cost keeps going up because of the fraud and all that, right? And it's crazy. It's not fun.
Sorry, can we spend a second on because you've mentioned it a few times. What does fraud look like in like a neobank world? Like I get it from a credit card user perspective. From a neobank world, what are the most common ways people try to defraud?
Identity theft is a big thing.
So they'll sign up for an account in someone else's social security number
and try to take his whatever he's getting paid from the government. He has a pen, stuff like that.
So they'll redirect payment to that account.
Yes.
Okay.
And they will pull the money, take it out in either via crypto or just cash, right? Or just go to an ATM because because we gave them a debit card, so they can go to the ATM, and it's like they're stealing from just like the poorest of the poorest.
Yeah.
And money laundering. We were called a couple of times to the New York Sheriff's Office because like you just don't know. They are doing such a good job. They open accounts, they launder money, they move crypto money around, they do all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And many of it is just like like what's called friendly fraud, right? I fund my Lens bank account with $20,000. I go to Vegas for the weekend. I come back home. I dispute everything, and I say that somebody stole my whatever.
Okay.
And just like, somebody was coming in just to, do like referral, $5 on Cash App and stuff like that.
Yep.
So it's also like, that's not why, so it's not maybe fraud, but you're going to close it.
Yep.
Because it's not.
So you were spending, I guess, a ton of time now all of a sudden trying to solve these fraud problems, which is not your core business. So you were building a bank for micropreneurs, and all of a sudden fraud becomes the main thing you spend your time on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's just like all the users that you're acquiring are not behaving the way, or not all, but a big part, which completely change your business model, your financial model. Yeah. And we just, at a certain point, we said, okay, this is being irresponsible. We cannot, I have a fiduciary responsibility. I can't, if I know that I'm doing something that is harming my investors, I have to stop it.
Right. Once you don't believe that you can fix it, right? Once you've lost belief that you can solve it or fix it, right?
I still believe that I can fix it. I still believe that I can bring value, but not in that way.
Right.
And that's the second part of the story.
Right. So you guys start talking about it, and what are you talking about? Are you saying at that point we have to pivot, or are you saying what are the ways we can solve our biggest problems? Like what? Yeah.
The first thing that we are saying is that we have to stop now. Stop
advertising.
Stop
acquiring users.
Stop acquiring users.
Okay.
And start thinking of how you are basically winding down.
I guess that's what I'm trying to get to is how long was the process of something's not going right to like stop the marketing campaigns, and start winding down?
I think that 3 or 4 months after we had the last fundraise, we started talking about it, and I think it was like 6 weeks until it was like, first we stopped advertising, and then we said, okay, let's see what will happen. Let's see if maybe we have some organic growth. Let's see what will happen. Let's think about, doing something else with these people, for these people, because we had a bunch of like few hundred of really good users, right?
So basically the first step you take pretty quickly, it sounds like, is stop marketing spend. No marketing spend. Because it's not only not doing anything for us, it is harming us.
It's harming us.
So let's stop that. And that gives you some few weeks or a couple, I don't know what it is, but have some amount of time to be like, okay, let's take a fresh look at this and let's see how our users behave. And then I guess at some point in the next few weeks, you'd said, you must have decided, okay, we're not turning it back on, right? There must have been a decision where you said, we can't solve the fraud problems that we're experiencing. Is that right?
At that point, we also didn't have a lot of money left.
Okay.
I mean, the account was like, $2 or $2.5 million, something like that. And we just didn't feel that with what we had then, we'll actually be able to do something with that offering.
Yep.
And we said,
because at this point, now people aren't going to subscribe. The cost of acquisition is very high, and it's made even higher by the fraud stuff. And then you have to spend time solving the fraud stuff. So at some point, you just say, okay, this is not working.
It's not working.
Yeah,
it's just not working.
Yeah,
and that's like 2.5 years into.
Okay, what was that moment like? That moment of this isn't working. We have to start winding down.
It was. It's just not. It's not one feeling. There's definitely relief, a lot of fear.
Wait, tell me about the relief part.
You're like, okay, this is not working. And then you said, okay, this is not working, so that's the relief. And then you say, now what? I'm fucked.
Right.
So that's the,
right. But I asked about the relief part because I experienced something similar, right? When I started, between the moment I sort of like, wait, something's not working. And then me and the team were working on it for heads down for 2 months. And then there was a moment about 2.5 months after that first moment when I was like, something's not working, where I just said, we had tried a few things. We had pushed them out quickly, hoping that they would solve the problem. And then we had a ton of other things on the list that could be potential solves for the problem. But my confidence level in those things was way, way, way lower than the first few things we tried. And I just remember sitting there being like, no, it's not worth spending our time, our money, our investors' money on these things that I think have such low likelihood of success. And it was this feeling of relief. Like I've spent the last 2.5 months morning, night, sleeping, eating, whatever, just tearing myself apart. This is a problem. There must be a solution. And then on the moment you have that, at least for me, when I had that realization, wait, you know what? Either maybe there's a solution, but I'm not going to find it, or there's a solution, but I don't have enough time to find it, or there isn't a solution. Just the moment you essentially accept defeat in that sense, which is a tough thing to say, if you accept defeat, it was a relief. It was this moment of I don't have to struggle as I was struggling before to solve this problem. There's other problems to solve, which we're going to get to how you solved it, but I wonder if that resonates with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 100%. That's part of it. And that's the good part of it, right? Because you're also like, what should I do now? Should I give back the money?
Right.
Do I need to, should I try pivoting?
Yep.
Like what can we do here? And we said, okay, let's, first, so at that stage we said, okay, Lance is dead. We don't think that there's anything we can do to save it.
Mm-hmm.
So we started also talking to people about buying our users.
Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, the existing users are just operating as normal, right? No new products are going out and new features, but they're able to use the service as normal.
Yes.
It's no announcements, no nothing yet, right?
No.
Right.
No.
I ask because it's important when
especially with money.
Right. People don't want to think all of a sudden like there's problems with my bank account.
Yeah.
Right?
And also because we are working, we are not really a bank, right? We have a custodial bank behind us, so we are, by proxy we are also regulated. So I just can't close. There are protocols and
right, more complicated than someone selling a SaaS tool or something.
Yes, as it should be.
Right.
So we stopped advertising. We started thinking about selling the users, and we also got into a room and said, okay, now what? What are we going to do? Are we going to give back money to investors? At that stage, we basically had to let go of most of the team.
Right.
And we stayed like 4 or 5 people.
Okay.
Something like that. And and just brought everything to minimum and said, okay, so us 3 founders, me, Tom, and Oren, went into a room and said like,
wait, before you get this, I want to hear it. I want to ask another question.
Yeah, go for it.
What was the relationship or communication with your investors in that 2 or 3 month period when you decided, or what I think it sounds like 2 or 3 months, right? 6 weeks, you said. Sorry, 6 weeks. What was it? What were you telling them? Were you telling them? What was their reaction?
That was one of the
whatever you feel comfortable saying.
That was one of the most scary things. Because these people just believe, like some of them just like 6 months before basically gave us money, right?
Right.
So it's very, very, very stressful. You feel that you are disappointing them, and you are disappointing them.
Yeah.
And you are basically, telling them that you remember the story that I told you 6 months ago. It didn't really turn out.
Right.
It's a very, very, very tough thing to do. And that was also, I think, by far the hardest thing in our pivot. We will get to it, and I will.
I know there's more on that, but in that initial, like, did you call them? Did you email them? Did you email them together, individually? Like, how did you?
So some of them definitely, yes, individually, meeting face to face, explaining. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not fun. But that's what I had to do at the time.
Did different investors have different responses?
Yes. Very much so.
So this I'm saying pre-decision to pivot, when you're just telling them, hey, it's not working. So they had very different responses.
Yes, even then. But at that stage, all of them were like very like, yeah, you can do it. Let's do this. Let's try this. Okay. I already knew that there was really nothing that we can do there.
Got it. So meaning some of them were like, you can still salvage this. Have you tried this thing? Have you tried that thing?
Yeah.
Right. But I think so. That's an interesting thing, right? So you have to listen, right? A, because they're smart people and they might have something to say, but B, because they're your investors and it's their money that you're spending, although they've entrusted it to you. But you've lost confidence at this point, right? And so
yes, I basically lost confidence, and I also not only confidence. I knew that by doing something else, I would like just expediting the process of burning their money.
Yep.
So that's
something else in that same with Lance.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And then us 3 founders went into a room and said, okay, what do we want to do? Yep. How do we want to approach this? So we knew that this wasn't working. Now the question is, either we give back money or we try to pivot.
How serious were you guys about giving back money? Like, was it a real consideration?
Absolutely. For me, yes. I actually wanted to give back money.
Well, we'll talk about it soon. But when you tell the rest of the story, I would love to hear at what point did that flip for you? But tell the story, and then maybe if you remember, like, tell me, that's the moment when I said, I don't want to give back money. I think this is such a great idea that I want to go do it. So you get in the room.
Yeah, we get in the room. We said, okay, let's think of ideas, and then we understood that thinking of ideas is the worst thing that we can do now. We've just proved big time that our ideas are worthless, and we said, instead of that, let's think of core principles or first principles that will be important for us while pivoting.
Right.
I'm telling it in a sentence, but it took like a week for us to to really be able to articulate that notion of trying to think of first principles.
Yeah, you were sitting there, you were talking about a whole bunch of different things, and finally after
fighting,
a week, right,
and
and then finally someone's like, guys, what are our core principles? And that's okay.
Kind of.
I'm dramatizing for the purpose of one day, like the Hollywood recreation of Sequence's story.
Yeah. You should have been there, and you could have definitely helped us.
Fly on the wall. Do it in a podcast studio next time.
But then we came up with 2 things that were like really, really important for us. One of them, and that goes back to the fact of like not doing what everybody else is doing. We said, okay, we don't want to go into red oceans anymore. We are looking
define red ocean, because not everyone.
Red ocean is like a super competitive market where everybody is eating, so the water are red.
It's very bloody,
full of blood. And we said, okay, good, but how do we think about it? And there's a framework that I really like because it's very simple. 4 quadrants: right, wrong, consensus, non-consensus.
Mm-hmm.
If you are wrong, you are just wrong. Nothing you can do about it. If you are right and consensus, that's exactly the definition of red ocean, because nobody thought that the idea of Lance was stupid. It was, yeah, of course, freelancers, they need a bank. If you be the bank for them, they will come.
Right.
That's not where you want to be. And
Parallels with, wow. As you say it, I'm like thinking back to my own experience.
Yeah, I bet. And where you can really, the place where you can really bring innovation and build something new is when you're non-consensus right. This is like having like a vision into the future.
Yep.
It's not nothing that I came up with. People thought about it way before us. We just used it. So that was one, non-consensus right.
Yep.
The second one was that we are all over 40. We wanted to make sure that we invest the next 5, 10, 15 years of our lives building something that is A, meaningful, and B, having chances of succeeding.
Yep.
So we were optimizing for conviction. Those were the two things that we started with.
Right.
Then, and remembering that we don't know shit, that we need to, that we can't trust our own ideas, we went and started talking to a group of Lance's best users.
Okay.
And we told them...
Right, you said there were a few hundred that you had that were great users.
Yes. And they were happy to talk to us. And we started talking...
Of course, they got this amazing product for free. Like, they were thrilled to talk to you.
I don't think it has to do with free, by the way. So we started asking them, like, what is it that you like about the product? Why are you here? And it was very clear from the beginning that what they really liked, and some of them even said it. We said, we really love this mini Zapier or mini automation for my money. I wish I could connect and then everybody wanted something different. Like one asked for, I want to connect my Venmo, my PayPal, my crypto wallet, my husband's account, my wife's account, my student loan, my mortgage, my 401k. Everybody wanted to connect something different. And after we heard it like quite a few times, Oren, my co-founder and also our CTO, said like, what these guys are really asking for is a router for their money.
Right.
And we said, okay, that's interesting.
Right.
But we
Sorry, just to I don't want to spend too much time on the new business, but I do want to explain it later. But basically, it's like you don't have to be a bank anymore. You can just be like what Mint did for personal accounts, but with the ability to actually move the money, not just view it. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
If you remember, that's what Lance's first users of the first app asked for.
Right.
So
right. But you interpreted it then as we need to be a bank.
Yes.
I have a question about that I've been wanting to ask for the last however many minutes. Did you interpret it that way because you didn't know that you could build it differently, that you could build it as not being a bank yourself? Or did you interpret it that way because for another reason, I don't know, whatever, there could be a million reasons.
It's a good question. And I think that we just didn't have enough imagination and we didn't really think about non-consensus right. Because we went to consensus right.
Right, which is, we need to be a bank. People want that. In order to move money, we need to be a bank, as opposed to you can move money without being a bank.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Technically, what we've built behind the scenes for Sequence is a bank.
Right.
But we don't position ourselves as a bank, and we are not competing with banks.
Right.
Right.
You're partnering with really. It's
yes. We can explain the product a bit in depth later. But so then we had the notion of like being like a router for money.
Wait, and so how long? So you get in the room. It takes you a week to come up with these core principles, and how long? And then you do a lot of interviews. I think you told me last time we talked 200 interviews, something like that.
Yeah, 200 touch points. Not all interviews. Some were like questionnaires and stuff like that.
Okay, still so 200. So how long from then until hey, we're onto something like this is our idea. We're going to go start trying to figure out if it's worth pursuing.
So we started. I don't fully remember, but I think it was maybe 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
4 to 6 weeks until we came up with the idea of router for money. Then we went to talk to people who never heard about us, don't know Lance, not necessarily freelancers, anything from full-time employees to business owners. And we told them, hey, we are going to build a router for your money. And out of every 10 people that we spoke to, like 6, 7 would go like, you guys are idiots. I don't even know what you want from me.
Yeah.
And 3, 4 would go like, where have you been all my life? Look at my spreadsheet. Look at what I've built. Look at this. So it was very, very, very confusing. So 100% non-consensus. Right or wrong, we still didn't know. Yeah. And that was very hard, right? Because it's very confusing.
You're getting totally disparate signals.
Yes.
Some saying,
do opposite.
What are you even talking about? And others saying like, yes, give me this right now.
Yes. And it was very, very, very confusing. We said, okay, we are optimizing for conviction. How can we get to conviction? And we just said, okay, let's do, like a lean startup 101, right?
But sorry, those people you talked to initially, friends, like acquaintances, or you found, where did you find them?
So we used a bunch of like, userinterviews.com, like all kinds of stuff like that. And then just like reaching out on LinkedIn. We used like automation for LinkedIn. We just told people, do we're going to give you $50, jump on a call with us.
Right.
And just friends of friends and people that we knew.
Yep.
Only in the US, obviously. So that was going back to that, we said, okay, how do we know? How are we getting to conviction that people actually, that we are going to spend the next 15 years of our lives building something meaningful?
Right.
It's a big decision, right? Because it was innovative, it was cool, like router for your money, sounds cool, maybe, but we didn't really know. And then we said, okay, let's build a landing page. Let's tell people that we are going to build, that we are thinking of building router, we call it money route or route money, we had like a shitty name like that.
Yeah.
Designed the landing page in a day and told people, if you want to get lifetime access to a product we are thinking of building, pay $200 today. And I told Tom and Oren, my co-founders, I told them, you guys are crazy. $200 is too much. And they
right,
said,
you guys are coming from a place where you couldn't even get people to pay $10 a month
Exactly.
for a huge set of services, and all of a sudden they're like, "We need to." So, okay, what was their thinking behind 200?
So the thinking was that we really wanted to get to conviction. At that time, we read, especially Tom, read a lot of books about pricing. There's a book called Pricing Innovation, and a lot of ways how to really get to conviction. And I can send a bunch of those books.
Maybe at the end or in the show notes we can post those.
It really helped us to frame the questions and frame all the process of doing that. The $200 was just a bold move because we wanted real conviction.
Right.
We didn't want to fool ourselves. We didn't want to go back to dropping the price.
Right. So if it's too low of a price, then people just take a flyer on it. Like, oh, sure, why not?
$5, right?
Yeah. And that's not really a good signal.
But $200 is something that you really need to think about, right?
Yeah.
It's not like $5, right?
Yeah.
So we put it out there, and I was like, nobody's going to buy.
Wait, how did you get people to visit this?
So we ran Facebook ads.
Okay.
100% return on ROAS, by the way, for that. Never happened again. And what happened is that in 5 days, 100 people paid the $200 and got so excited about it that they started the Discord server for us. I was never on Discord before that. Started talking about Sequence on Reddit.
Wow.
And people just came. It's crazy. It's crazy. And people just came knocking on the door, handing us the $200. I want to get a live, and then at this stage we said, okay, the lifetime deal is off the table.
Right.
This is when we started getting a little bit greedy, and we told them, but you can lock in a discounted subscription for life.
Right.
And we had a bunch of people, maybe 15 or something like that, who paid a discounted subscription for a product that not only wasn't ready yet, we haven't even started building.
Right.
So that was conviction. Yeah. Right. And by the way, it's at that point that we got to conviction, we said, okay, now what we are optimizing for, and the answer was learning, and also optimizing for learning means you need to increase the friction, like we did with the $200.
For sure.
So that's how we got to conviction, started building.
So wait, not before you get to there, you're doing the tests. What are you telling your investors?
I'm telling them after the test.
Yeah.
After the test. Right, there's an important part and the most painful one maybe. I'm going back to investors and telling them, listen, we are onto something.
So just to set the stage, most of them the last time we talked to them was saying it's not working. We're going to go back to the drawing board and figure out what to do.
We said it's not working.
Right. Oh, right. You said it's not working. But so now the next time you're talking to them, you're saying to them, hey, we're onto something. Is that right? Or were there in between?
In between, there's always communication. They ask what's going on, and it's
we're testing, but nothing as formal as.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a very hard place to be in.
Yeah, it's limbo.
Yeah, because you're really, really disappointed them. You put a lot of hopes that what you're doing now will work. You don't really have any, base to assume that it's going to work.
Right.
It's a very difficult, like emotionally and mentally, it's very, very difficult.
And it's lots of different parties. It's not like one person that you're going to. You have many different investors, and they have their own incentives and their own thoughts, and so it's like a herd of cats, really. Yeah.
It's herding angry cats. And I can definitely understand them. It's like. Anyway,
yeah,
it's difficult, especially as the CEO, to tell people to be in that situation.
Yep.
And then you come to them and tell them, I'm going to build a router for money, and who is this idiot? Why did I give him money?
That's the dangers of being non-consensus, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just non-consensus and wrong.
Yeah.
So that's the worst place. But and then I came back to them. That was already 2012, 22, when everything went down just after COVID. It was very hard to raise money for everybody.
Yep.
I went back and I said, like, listen, we are onto something. We saw the 100 people pay the $200 and they were like, no.
They were like, who cares? 100
No.
people.
Yeah, no, we are not going to give you any more money. Some of them, were angels who were not in a position to invest more. Some were VCs who didn't want to invest more. Each had its own.
But you were convinced you needed more funding at this point, or not even convinced. You needed more funding.
Yes, I needed more. I needed more funding, 100%. And then after I exhausted the Lance investors, I said, okay, let's go and pitch. And I think that's maybe one of the hardest parts in my life emotionally. It's very difficult. You have all those investors you just let down. You let go of all the people. There is something that you're convinced about, but you got such a beating last time for something that you were convinced about. It's very difficult. Right. I counted the other day. I think that I've pitched 160 investors.
On the new business.
On Sequence.
Which you named Sequence, right? Okay.
Yes. I pitched Sequence to them. Many of them said, like, timing-wise, we are not doing any new investments. It was a very, very hard point.
Yeah, this is
2022.
Or end of 22, early 23. Is that right?
Maybe even before, slightly before that. Yeah, slightly before that. So many just told me, like, listen, I'm not doing any new investments. We are just making sure that our portfolio is okay. It was like everything went down at that stage. So that wasn't great. A few investors looked at it and then took the time to understand why it's not going to work. And explained very, they articulated very well why what we are doing is not going to work.
Okay.
And maybe they will be right, by the way.
It's almost like you appreciate they spent the time with it, but also like, okay, great, moving on to the next one. Right.
Yeah. That's what you have to do as a founder, right? You will hear so many no's.
Right. And if you're not, maybe it's consensus right or consensus wrong. And in that case.
Exactly. And then we had a few people who took a deeper look. Some that I think highly of, and I really wanted them to invest. So we went through a few, but then they not that it was a secret, but they looked at the cap table and said, like, listen, I like it, I like you. I'm not getting myself into this.
Too complicated?
Too messy. And then I was both very stubborn and lucky to get 2 term sheets from 2 investors who, at the end, invested in our seed round. Aleph, that we mentioned, and Emerge, another Israeli VC that have done quite a few consumer, good investors that I'm lucky to have. So we got 2 term sheets. Both of them, Aleph led at the end. And basically what Eden, the partner at Aleph, required as part of the term sheet was to completely restructure the company, something that I hope no one of the listeners will have to go through. A very, very hard process. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Right.
Because basically the mechanism was like, we are starting a new company that will buy assets from the old company for equity in the new company. That was the deal. And we just... And obviously, in order to do that, you need to get waivers from all previous investors.
Right.
And I didn't. I like my entire negotiations with Eden was to make sure that I'm not leaving behind the people who believe me in Lance.
Right.
And I wanted to take them with us to the new company.
Right.
And I really fought to get them as much as I could. And then I had to go and collect the waivers.
And I know this is a tactical thing, but you have to collect a waiver from everyone who invested, or there's sort of a certain threshold that you need to cross?
No, I technically, like according to Delaware law, you have to pass 50% of each share class.
Got it.
But the term sheet requires 95%. Because
right. So that was Eden saying you need to get pretty much everyone on board.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the number of waivers that I had to collect was 83, including employees, accelerators, everything. Even people who gave me proxy, right? Because it was such an aggressive move that I had to go and collect waivers from everybody. Out of the 83, I think that 78 were like, thank you, we love you, good luck. Whatever you need, tell me where to sign. And a few were not very happy.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I can understand that also.
Yeah, I know you can. Yeah, for sure. I see it in your eyes.
No, definitely. I can definitely understand it. It was very, very difficult. Some really, like, I don't think it was intentionally, but made my life miserable.
Yeah.
It was really, really, really a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to have Eden, who helped me throughout the process. He pulled the term sheet once. And I knew why he was doing that. He wanted to help me, but he didn't tell me that, right? And I woke up in the morning and I say, I'm sorry, I'm putting the term sheet. You want to shoot yourself in the head. Seriously,
Wow.
like, I'm not joking. It's very, very, very hard. And I said, like, how am I going to tell that to my co-founders now?
Wow.
Yeah. And it took us 7 to 8 months to complete that process. In the end, I got 100% waiver signed. 83 out of 83, but it took me 7-8 months. And I'm by no means consider myself to be like the guru of negotiating. But if you have nothing to give, you can actually be good at it.
Right. When you have nothing to lose.
I actually had everything to lose, but I had nothing to give them.
I see what you're saying. Right. You could. There's no negotiation. There's no. Oh, I can throw a little bit more here. No, this is what it is. And yeah,
I have nothing, guys. I have nothing. I have nothing to give you. There's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
So that gives you a lot of power. I can tell you that some investors were like very, very, very aggressive, thinking that they can get something that other like wouldn't get.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't give anything.
Yeah.
And it was like it was.
So what are you doing? By the way, that's a fascinating few minutes that you just. That's crazy. What are you doing with the business during this time? Because you haven't raised the money because you haven't gotten all the waivers yet. So you have enough essentially to keep going and keep building until this closes? And like, how are you dealing with that? One day there's a pull term sheet, then it's back on, and I'm sure every day your cash balance is declining. How are you dealing with that?
So first of all, we really brought like cash to burn to minimum, right? We really lowered our salaries to the minimum. We all have families and mortgages and stuff.
So that was a big step. I know you're sort of glossing over. That was a big step. You like lower you and your co-founder salaries, and it's it's very meaningful.
And we had to
you have families, you have homes.
Yep. So we had to do that. That gave us some more runway. We knew what we were doing. So building Sequence, we knew how we wanted it to work on the back end, or at least the vast majority of it. And what I did then was to completely, like, my co-founders didn't know the emotional state or what was going on. Not because I was hiding it from them. I just wanted them to concentrate on building the new product.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. There's a difference between hiding and shielding, right? And you can be transparent, but also shield people from like the craziest stuff that's going on.
Yeah. Because
if they're worrying about that, then they're not worrying about building the product or building the business.
So I was really trying to do that. Right. I'm not sure if you ask them, I'm not sure that they did a very good job.
Yeah, even my employees, like, or my colleagues, when I was starting to like doubt things internally, before I said it to all of them, afterwards they said to me, we could tell something was off. We could tell that, so people can tell.
Yeah, but I mean, I remember going into the office with one of the investors that we really had to get his signature, told me, I'm not signing. Do whatever you want. I'm not signing. And I was like, this is it.
Right.
So then I told them, because I was like, guys, that's it. Let's go home.
Yeah.
So it was very, very, very hard. I hope that nobody who's listening to this will have to go through something like that.
Yeah.
It was extremely hard.
You know what I think? The thing is that a lot of people maybe will go through different things, but they'll go through some crazy stuff like that. Again, whether it's the same exact thing of going to need to get 83 signatures or something else, but there's some really tough moments that I think founders go through. Again, that's why I just felt like there's stories like this that so many founders have, whether they're as bad or they're differently bad, that no one really gets to hear, because it's not really sexy to talk about the hard parts about startups, right?
Everybody likes to tell how they killed it.
I'm crushing it. This month we grew 40%, and we brought on these new investors, and we got these new logos, But I think the things you learn from, as in your business, right? Failure taught you probably much more than any of the successes you had with Lance.
Yes, 100%, for sure.
Okay, so
but you know the like fail fast.
Yeah.
Try to succeed fast. It's better if you can do that.
So okay, I'll ask you about what you learned later. Okay, so you finally get all the sign-offs, and so what happens next? Like you increase the size of the team, or you're like what happens next?
I think that because I've also built businesses that are not startups, I'm always very careful. I don't like too much burn. I never overhire. We have a team now that we took us some time to build it because we wanted to get the best people that we can.
Yep.
I'm extremely proud of our team. We have besides one, all of our heads off are women.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that I think plays well for us because just having more perspective, especially around money and how different people think about it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, women make most of the household spending decisions anyway, so it's probably a good thing to have. And then additionally, I guess it's just kind of like it's a show that in today's world, you can build a great team regardless of what someone's gender or sex is.
Of course. And I also think more than that, I think that if your first hires, you'll do your best to bring on strong, smart women, it will just open for you another 50% of the population for the more junior hires.
Right.
Because women will, I think, and that's what I've heard, that women will feel more comfortable where there are already other women at the table. So head of engineering, head of operations, head of customer experience, head of data, all women, head of design,
awesome.
Head of growth, women.
Awesome.
Yes.
So
I'm very proud of.
So, but you built that over that wasn't all at once. You're saying that was
no, that until now. Right. But I think that Sequence, I am extremely grateful for what happened here, and I know how luck played a role here. I'm not going to take all the credit to myself. I think that we really hit the nerve. And I think the biggest, the very initial leading indicator that we hit a nerve was the fact that from day zero we had a community around the product.
Yep.
So we have a crazy community of people who are really, they love what we do. They really help. They know when to tell you when you are wrong. They really are pushing us to be a much better version of the product. So that's one thing that I'm extremely excited about. When I said that we started, that after optimizing for conviction, we started optimizing for learning. So there isn't a free trial, there isn't freemium, there isn't a free second. We pay for the product.
Right.
So that's another thing that we've heard. And I think that maybe the biggest learning, like you said, that we moved away from just a financial router. We really moved away from that because that's just this very small part of the opportunity that or the external forcing factor that justifies the existence of Sequence, right? Because if you think of this as the Sequence pitch.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's a good segue. I was about to ask about it.
So basically, until not.
Well, maybe tell us the pitch, but then tell us how you went from the router to that.
Yeah, perfect. So until not so many years ago, you had one point of contact. All your money needs were taken care of by your bank. Loans, credit cards, mortgages, checking accounts, savings accounts, everything was done in the bank. Today, that's obviously not the case.
Right.
The average American, the average American's stack
went
through a massive unbundling.
Right.
And the average American has now 15 different accounts. And if you're a micro business owner or a small business owner, it's even more complicated than that. And that it's very hard to follow all those different places. It's even harder to manage them. And it's almost impossible to make smart financial decisions in context. You need to spend a lot of energy to do that. And the gap between consumers, but even more than that, micro business owners and all the different places in which their money lives keeps growing because of open banking, banking as a service, embedded finance. One of the biggest banks in the States is Starbucks.
They load money on the cards.
Tens of millions of people have their money in Starbucks. Yeah. It's a bank.
Yeah.
And there's a huge opportunity for a company, hopefully it will be Sequence, to fill that gap and to help people see everything, act, and execute the financial strategy. And our mission from the very first second of the company was to improve those people's lives through their financial well-being.
Yeah.
And the way to do it is a little bit of intent, tiny bit of education, and a lot of automation.
Right. I think it's the active piece that's the most interesting. Like I was an early Mint user, and until the Mint was recently shut down by Intuit, like I always felt like what a huge missed opportunity, because it was only, first of all, it was buggy and there was a whole bunch of things wrong. Like they never really improved the software from when they first launched. But beyond that, it was like, okay, you've shown me something, but now help me do something about it. And every other service that launched since then had the same problem. We can show you all your accounts, we can aggregate them, even if they had better sorting algorithms or tagging algorithms for the different charges. It was just like, it was read-only. And I guess my read on, or my understanding of Sequence is like, what if you made what Mint was intended to be read and write, right? And so you could actually move the flows without having to log into every single different account and do it manually. And you guys, is that the right way to sort of think about it?
Yes, 100%.
Right.
100%. We came to it from the other side, right? So visibility and recommendations is great, but we are actually moving the money for you. We can pull and push from wherever you hold money. Right.
It's kind of like when my first daughter was born, I started a 529 plan. I don't know if you know, in the U.S., savings plan for people who don't know, savings plan for your children, so that when they go to college, they can have money to pay for college. And every year I forget to add more money to the 529. And it's like, what if I could just connect the account and set it up so that, I know I'm sort of like, not intentionally, but pitching your product, but like that's sort of an easy use case. But I'm sure there's many more, like people are telling you they're doing crazy things. They're setting up insane kind of if this, then that functions, right?
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Sometimes I look at what people do and I'm like, what the hell? It takes me a week to understand what exactly they are doing, because people are smart.
Yeah.
And the people that
and they're motivated for their purpose, and you can sort of give them a tool set that now they can sort of exploit for their own purpose. And
it's like sometimes
it's kind of like Minecraft for people who care about their finances.
yes, 100%. And the way that we think, like the way that I think about it, sometimes it's like having like a gym app that goes to the gym for you, right?
Right.
It's like you set it up, and automation is so powerful.
Right.
I mean, Albert Einstein said that the eighth, how was it?
I don't know this.
Compound, the power of compound.
Oh, compound interest? Yeah.
We need to find it.
That'll be in the show notes too, as podcasters say.
Maybe you should take this part off.
Yeah, right.
We need to come back.
Keep it on.
So automation is so powerful, and we are seeing it. We just help people. Like, I mean, we have so many examples, and I can also like give some.
Wait, but actually, that's a good segue to or rewind back to, how did you go from router to that? Was it just every day that went by you saw how people were using it and you said, wait, this is bigger than we even thought originally? Or even before you launched it, you were like, wait, now that we've actually have something that works, let's actually think about it, and you realize the product could be much bigger than what you originally thought?
Yeah, I think that just spending more time with the people and within the problem really help us to understand how big of an opportunity it is, and in how many points in our customers' life we can really help them improve their financial well-being.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have a seat at the table. We are the table.
Right.
All the money comes through us. We see everything. We see all the liabilities. Obviously, what people want to connect, right? And everything is flowing through Sequence. So I have many points in which I can tell you, hey, Zach, you're overpaying for this loan.
Right. You could say, okay, this loan is an 8% interest rate, but this one is a 3%, but you're paying more than the 3%. You should actually be shifting your payoff to the 8%. Right.
So we do that already automatically.
Right.
We allow people to opt into that repayment optimization.
Like optimization, right?
And we have people like this month. We had like 5 people reaching out. Most of them, by the way, are business owners that had like some kind of a business loan, telling us, I've just closed the $20,000 high interest debt in 6 months. It was supposed to go for 18 months.
Right.
So the automation is so powerful.
Right.
And you really don't need to be a genius to do it. You need to, if you can send like a MailChimp email, or if you can like build like a Zapier Zap, or it's simple.
Right.
It's not complicated.
Right.
You just need to come in with intent. And for me, somebody comes in and tells me that we helped him reduce his debt is huge.
Yeah.
It's really, it's an amazing thing to do.
What a feeling. Let's talk about the things, stepping back, that you learned. So I want to go back to something you said early in the conversation about performance marketing.
Yes.
It sounded like you thought it was a bad idea then. How do you think about it? Do you think you just did it improperly then? Or do you think, what did you learn from your experience with it? Sorry, and let me just give preface. I come at it from the last company I worked at where I was the CEO. We spent $90 million a year on performance marketing, and it got to a point where it was a drug that you can't get off of. Once you're on it, if it becomes too much of your growth strategy, you then can't get off of it because then you can't grow year to year, and it becomes it's a vicious cycle. But I also know that many businesses find successful ways to incorporate performance marketing in order to grow their business. So
it's not about good or bad. From my perspective, I think that misused it can be like heroin basically, and you can't get off of it. But if you use it to fuel a machine, it's definitely worthwhile. So that's why I think that looking only at growth, looking only at like user growth or even growth in ARR is not enough.
Right.
You need to put some guardrails to it. Each like different sectors or like B2B, B2C will each have its own thing. I can tell you that for us in Sequence, obviously getting new ARR is obviously super important, but just as important is payback period and the NDR, net dollar retention.
Yep.
Or net revenue retention. And if your payback period is two-way out, then performance marketing just doesn't make sense, right? Because you're coming back to what Lens was.
Yep. Because something happens that they become they churn way before they actually can pay you back.
Exactly. So it's all on. There are obviously other things that you need to look at, but if you're growing your ARR fast enough and your payback period, you're happy with your payback period. In our case, we are aiming for under 12 months. Each sector will be different, and you have like an NRR that works for your business. Then you can just push more money into performance marketing. Right. If you are not getting there, then you need to stop.
Yeah.
You need to.
I think this is what so many companies lost or maybe didn't learn in that crazy period from 2020 to 2022, maybe even a little before that, which is that you can't have I think you can't have a singular goal. You have to have a goal constrained by a secondary goal.
Yes.
Right. And so growth is great, but it's constrained by profit. Now, you may not say you may not want to be profitable. You may not expect to be profitable. It's fine. But what is your bar? Are you okay with losing 5% on every user? Are you okay with losing 500% on every user? But you have to like sort of adhere to the bar. Otherwise, it's the Wild West. You can spend $100 acquiring a user or $1,000, and you don't care because you're still adding revenue.
And in some cases, you will actually be digging your own grave.
100%.
Right? 100%. So we look at again payback period, NDR, and new ARR. So that will give you like a good, like a good mix of making sure that you are going in the right direction. And then as long as those two other numbers are working, you can push more into performance marketing. That's okay.
Yeah. What other things did you learn from this process, from this pivot specifically?
I've learned many things, especially many about myself.
Maybe we should split it into the personal and professional.
So I think that one of the things that I already said is that nothing is the end of the world. There are seriously, we are in a point in time here in Israel where we really understand how fortunate we are. So let's keep everything in context. There are way worse things happening in the world.
Than shutting down your startup.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Or to failing. So that's one thing. And for that, I think that always look for the truth. Don't fool yourself. Charge, or else your product, or else people just don't see any value in your product. Resilient isn't always good, but and the line between being resilient and being stupid is a fine line. For now, looks like I'm falling on the right side, but it can change.
That's I think an important one, because in the last 10 years or so, I think, who was that professor that wrote the book? She called it Grit. I forget what it's called. But this concept of people are trying to understand what distinguishes successful people from people less successful, and this concept of grit, that stick-to-itiveness, right? That resilience, and maybe another word. And there can be too much grit, right? Yes. There's if you're too attached, if you're too heads down, and you don't sort of sit up and smell the coffee, or just wait, hold on, take stock of what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. Because I mean, the more, like we have a limited amount of time on this planet, right?
Yeah.
So not working on the right thing means that you are, there are time that you'll never get back.
I actually think that's like one of the most interesting things. Like I also had a moment of, do I give back the money or do I pivot to something? And I was adamant that if I didn't have an idea I believed in, why would I? And there were two. So we had three paths we can go down. Sort of two that were sort of offshoots of our original vision of Draftboard in the recruiting world, and one that was totally different. Sort of it took some of the same technology, but was a totally different end market customer or whatever. And the fourth option would have been to shut down. And I just could not get excited about the pivots into other things in recruiting. I just remember waking up being like, every time I would talk to someone about them, like, is it possible? Maybe there's a business there. I was like, do I really want to spend? I have limited time on this earth. I have family. I have like a family. I have, other things I want to do in life. Do I want to be working on something for 8, 10, 12 hours a day that I don't feel great about? And I didn't. And so then it was a question of, well, does the other idea, the third thing, feel good enough relative to giving back the money, because that was also an option, and I just got so excited about the other one that I decided to do it, kind of like you. But giving back the money was a totally real thing in my head. Now my investors did not prefer that, right? Their response to me was effectively, one of them said this: when we fund a startup, we fund someone to go searching, like wandering the desert. You don't know where you're going to find Oasis. You think it's here. Okay, so it ends up it's not there. You're going to continue wandering. because we think you're going to ultimately find it, but we want you to keep wandering.
Yeah.
But that's not always the right decision for the founder.
That's not always the right decision for the founder, and you are lucky to have good investors.
I'm very lucky.
Because I don't know who exactly said that to you, but sometimes they would won't be so forgiving.
Yeah, I probably also matters on the macro environment. Like you went to them at a time when like the VC world was just undergoing a crazy plunge, and everyone was nervous.
Yes, 100%.
Awesome, Gilad. This has been amazing. You're my first guest, so I appreciate everything. What should people know about you, about Sequence? Are you posting on Twitter, LinkedIn, somewhere else? Where can they find Sequence? Anything they should know about it? Yeah.
So getsequence.io, available to anyone who has a social security number in the States. Okay. Hyper focused on making micro business owners, anything from like freelancers to 5 people, businesses, to be successful with their money. So check it out. I'm mostly on LinkedIn. I try to build in the open, so I post a lot. I try to be as open as I can, because I wish I had people to look at while building. So just putting everything out there. Always happy to connect, always happy to chat, always happy to help fellow founders. So I almost always have time for a quick chat if anyone wants to ask anything. And if you can, don't go to restructuring. Build it right from the get-go.
Build it from a clean cap table. Exactly. Awesome. All right, we'll end on that. Thank you so much, Gilad. And until next time, everyone.